Hi, welcome to Live Longer, Live Stronger. I'm Keros Lowder.
I'm Brad Lowder, just happened to be his father.
Yes. And we are joined, luckily today, by Marjorie Lowder and Russ Nelson. Marjorie is the wife and partner of Brad, and definitely the better half. And Russ is Marjorie's baby brother. But like we learned last episode, far from smaller brother.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Russ. It's fun to have you here on the podcast with us and hear your unique perspectives as the baby of a family of 10 children. And what was it your dad, how did he describe his children when he met someone? What did he like to say?
I have 10 children and they're all sons, but 9 of them.
Yeah. A great sense of humor. So cute.
So this is part 2 of Lessons from a Life Lived Past 100. Your father was a centenarian, Russell M. Nelson, and we talked about these 8 principles of the blue zones, these 8 habits that are common and shared amongst these societies that tend to have more centenarians than others. And now we're into part 2. We're going to go through 5, 6, 7, and 8. First, Dad, tell me about plant slant. Number 5, plant slant. What is that? Is that just when you don't have a cage around your tomatoes?
Yes. That happens to us if we forget to put the tomato cages on. Yeah. We get major plant slant.
It's fun.
So Dan Buettner, who did this incredible research on these blue zones, and he was one who uncovered these 8 core principles that were common in all these very disparate geographies. He coined this phrase, so it's memorable, plant slant. But what it means is that you focus the majority of your calories and your meal on plant-based foods. And he's not a vegetarian, and the people in these blue zones weren't vegetarian, but he saw that most of their meals were fruits, vegetables, lots of beans, legumes, and so that's really the core. That is just putting a bigger emphasis on eating plants closest to the source, closest to whole foods as you can, and getting more of your protein from plants, from beans, legumes.
Something that we all, I think, try to do. Mm-hmm. It's not always the easiest thing, especially when there's kids in the car that are hungry and you pass a McDonald's. But Russ, we talked a little bit about your dad's eating habits in the last episode when we spoke about the 80% rule, about eating basically 80% of what you think you want, or what,
till you're 80% full.
Yeah, eat until you're 80% full, let your stomach catch up. But what were some specific ways that you saw your father lean towards plants in terms of his food, plant-based? Was it always that way? Was there ever change? What do you see with your father?
I've got 2 pretty good examples and memories for me. Being the youngest of 10, I got to do a lot of the manual labor around the house, the heavier lifting as my parents got older and I got bigger and stronger. But at any rate, we had a fairly sizable garden. I just remember my dad would love, it was one of his favorite things to go out and pick. Specifically, we had beets, we had potatoes, specifically kind of these new potatoes, red potatoes, peas, and corn, and we would go pick them. My mom would cook them up, and we would eat them. And you'd have thought he died and gone to heaven, because he was experiencing some of the best food that he'd ever had just right there. And he'd often make the joke, that these beets were inhaling and exhaling just hours ago, and to put a little humor into the meal. But that was a big deal for him to have that kind of fresh food and you know, the reward of this is something that we grew ourselves, harvested it, cooked it, and ate it, and that was, I think, an extra bonus.
Did any of that rub off on you? Is that part of your lifestyle now, part of your thing?
I've tried a garden myself. Oddly enough, the only thing that actually succeeded in our garden was jalapenos. And so I'm the only one in our house that really likes spicy stuff. So I can only eat so many jalapenos. But
Dad, no more jalapeno poppers, please.
But I do enjoy, natural foods. And as I'm aging, I'm also finding more satisfaction in natural foods and less satisfaction in processed foods. Just the way it tastes and makes me feel, it's noticeably different.
Marjorie, what are some things that you remember growing up in that household? Was that a focus? You know, Russ said that the gardening and the fresh vegetables from the garden, but what were the other ways that the natural foods, and especially the plant SLANT, that you saw that incorporated into what you ate growing up?
Well, I remember growing up, we would always have vegetables were always part of the meal, or fruit. I always didn't feel like it was complete unless it had a vegetable or two. I'm all for potatoes. I always loved the potatoes in any form, but when Russ was talking about the garden, I have such a funny memory. Do you remember when we had the big corn harvest one year? I think we planted extra rows of corn one year, and our neighbor had brought over his trucks, and I think he had those big metal milk cans full of boiling water. And I remember we would husk them and put them straight in. And then Russ and I just remember you and I in the back of the truck, and we're pulling out the corn. Just no. Yep. And it was the best. We just thought we had died and gone to heaven.
What is this sixth principle, the sixth habit,
the sixth habit of belong? It's interesting because this one specifically is about being part of a faith-based community. And they found, Dan Buettner and his team of researchers, of the 263 people they interviewed, all but 5 belonged to a faith-based community. Isn't that fascinating? And it didn't seem to matter what denomination it was. It was that they were part of a faith-based community and all of the benefits that come with that. The sociality, the intentionality, typically living a healthier lifestyle. So the researchers continued to dive into this, and they found that people who attended a church service at least 4 times a month lived on average between 4 to 14 years longer than those in their demographic group who didn't. Isn't that interesting?
I did. That fascinating.
Going to church can extend our life
by years.
Years. And it's research based. This isn't somebody who, I bet this helps. No, this is based in scientific research. So
it makes me think also of the previous episode when we talked about purpose. And a lot of these things, a lot of these principles, as we spoke about, including now, tie into each other, right? There, you can see 2 birds with 1 stone. Yeah. You can have movement while also finding that relaxing and downshifting. Belong, this sense of finding your faith and being part of this community and this whatever denomination it is, can also be part of your purpose and can also seed into a lot of those other principles.
Absolutely. And can lead to opportunities to serve and give and have a sense that your life has a purpose bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And believing in a higher power and feeling like there's greater purpose and meaning to life itself. So all of those things are factors, but that's, I think, really fascinating. That was maybe one that surprised me the most. Well, what's principle number 7?
Before we get there, I want to hear what is something small in your life that you feel like has enriched you or given you more purpose, or has helped you feel that spirit of belong in your faith?
Well, several years ago, I had an epiphany. I remember coming home from our worship service one Sunday, being frustrated because I thought these speakers were boring and not very good pulpit speakers. In our faith, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's a lay ministry. Members of the congregation are called upon from time to time to be the speakers in our worship service. So it's not a beautiful sermon carefully crafted by a paid pastor. So you kind of get where you get. And sometimes these talks are beautiful and profound, and sometimes they're snoozers. And one particular Sunday, there were a couple of snoozers, and I remember coming home thinking, I didn't get anything out of church, man. I don't know why I wasted my time. This is, I didn't come away with anything. And it was like a voice inside my head. And I don't know if it was just my own consciousness coming to bear, or God whispering some clarity to my mind and my heart. But the message was really clear. It's like, dude, you got it all backwards. And you don't go to be entertained and fed. You go to serve others. And your job, Brad Lowder, is to go and look around and find someone who feels lonely, who feels out of place, who feels unseen, who's having the worst day in their life, whose biggest struggle was just getting to church that day. And find that person and go put on arms and tell them I love them, and tell them how glad I am that they came to church. And when I had that epiphany, everything changed for me. It went from, man, these speakers are good, so it's not a waste of my time, to who there is hurting or just needs a smile, just needs a hand on the shoulder, and, to say, you're okay, brother. And I'm just, church wouldn't be the same if I didn't see you here every Sunday.
To help others feel like they belong.
Help others know that they belong, to know they're loved, to know they're seen. And that was a pivotal moment for me. Am I great at it every Sunday? No. Some Sundays I'm tired and cranky and just want to go home and watch the golf channel. And, but most Sundays I try. And Marjorie's so beautiful. She's my role model for this. It's just, before church starts, the worship service, she's going around and just hugging people. And, she goes right to the widows, right to the people are sitting alone. And that's another thing, is we try to find somebody who's sitting alone and they'll sit by, and nobody's like, no one should ever sit alone. So anyway, that was maybe a longer answer.
No, that was great. Russ, I know that your dad, we've talked about some of these stories already, but what are some experiences or something that sticks in your mind? What was a time where you felt like he really made someone feel like
that like they belonged?
I guess I have an example on a personal level and on even a larger scale that probably was pretty unique to him. But oftentimes on this smaller scale example, there's two different examples here. Oftentimes people would ask him to give them either some medical advice or even a priesthood blessing to help with healing and faith building and things like that. And he had two typical answers I shouldn't say typical. I would say the two answers that I heard the most were, I would be honored. I'd be happy to give you a blessing.
So true.
The other answer too was, did you know that your father or your teacher or your minister or your bishop has the very same priesthood I do? He can give you a blessing too. And I think in each of those examples, it lifts up not only the person seeking this help and assistance, but also those around that, nobody feels passed over when they ask an apostle to give them a blessing or something like that. But to be reminded of those little things that I think those help people feel uplifted and included, as well as the person receiving the blessing. And then, another big example that he kind of shared with us later after he became president of the church was, generally speaking, he was always, he's had a very curious mind. He always wanted to find the answers and I think that's what led him to be such a successful heart surgeon and things like that. And, but as he became president of the church had all these pageants everywhere, in Manti, in Hill Cumorah, in Mesa, and other places. He stopped to take the time to turn to those communities and say, do you even want to do this anymore? Is this something that you want to do? And I think just taking the time to hear back what people's desires and thoughts are, to incorporate all of that into an inspired decision later, I think really helped people feel heard and valued. And I think those are just some of the examples that come to my mind first of how he helped lift up and hear and validate those around him.
Love that. And this whole sense of belonging and belonging to a community like that leads right into the seventh habit and the seventh principle here with loved ones first. I mean, it sounds fairly straightforward. What is this principle of loved ones first?
Well, they found that these centenarians in these blue zones put their families first. Period. Exclamation point. Full stop. Now, in many cases, there are multi-generations living under one roof. As their parents aged, they took them in and cared for them. And the interesting part of this study showed that in those homes where they were caring for elderly parents, grandparents, not only did these elderly parents or grandparents live longer than their counterparts who weren't with family, the family members were healthier and happier, and they in turn ended up living longer. Isn't that interesting? But the core concept is this, is that these people put their families first. And it's fascinating to me in the time that I've been blessed to be part of your family and to know your amazing father, with as busy a schedule as he had, and with his responsibilities in our faith-based organization, leading a global church And prior to that, as a world-renowned heart surgeon, that he embodied this. It was family first. So share maybe a story or two from each of you that illustrate how he was able to do that when he had so many responsibilities in such a busy schedule.
I think that he exemplified that really well. Just, we always knew that, well, first of all, he told us that if you ever need me, call me. We had the office number at his medical office, and we knew how to call him. And he would say, unless I'm actually operating, I will take your call. And then he did. He followed through on that. So we knew that if he was in a meeting, he would step out of a meeting, unless he was. And later, as he was serving in the church, but not yet, the president, unless he was meeting with the prophet, he would step out of a meeting to take our call. And so that did two things. It helped us know that he put us first, but also it helped us gauge the level of urgency. We weren't going to call to say, Russell wore my shirt today and I'm just a little upset about it, And so we knew that if something was important enough to call him about, he definitely would take the call.
It's pretty sweet.
Mistake. I think I may have mentioned this earlier, but he would come home from the office, whether it was his doctor's office or later on in his church office, and he was there. He didn't go sequester himself in a different room or whatever. As soon as he walked in the door, he was wondering how our day went. First he'd go and have to kiss our mom and say
hello to mother.
Yeah. And then he was all about being with us and being engaged and actually present. And so that left a big impression on me of how important it is to, be there and be present when we're home and be involved. So, and even down to simple routines. I always marvel at how he made the mundane feel fun and exciting. I have good memories of taking out the garbage on Monday nights or doing the dishes or doing the bedtime routine when I was young of brushing our teeth and, getting ready for bed and things like that, even down to reading books and scriptures together before we would go to sleep. And so all of those are pretty cherished memories, but the core of each one of them is that he was there, he was participating, and he was present. And so that was a big part.
When he was home, he was really home.
Yeah. And Russ, you've taken on so many of those characteristics and habits and qualities, and that's really impressed me to see how you father your children in that same way, and you make the mundane fun and interesting and joyful rather than feeling like an awful egregious chore. So you've been able to infuse that same kind of fun and energy into how you've raised your beautiful family, and it's fun to see your dad reflected in you and some of those behaviors to watch.
I often wonder how he would come home from being the guy in charge. You're the surgeon. You're in charge. People listen and obey and then do it. And he would come home to us hooligan that just would, whatever. I don't know how he did it. So
with a good dose of humor and patience.
Yeah. Can I share a quick story, Dan? It's very personal. When I learned firsthand that he drove the family first, this was 9 years ago. And I had a minor heart attack, or as my brother Jeff says, it's only minor if someone else has it. So we ended up in the emergency room, and we, done a little triage, and they decided I wasn't in imminent danger of dying right then. So they had to sit and wait for a few minutes to be seen. And while we're sitting there, Marjorie called her father and didn't pick up, so she left a little message. And just a very few short minutes later, he called back. He was in Mexico, I think Mexico City, in the middle of a meeting that he was in charge of, and he was the primary speaker. And he excused himself to go out in the hall to call Marjorie back. So, of course, knowing the heart better than, just about anyone on the planet, he's going through these questions to Marjorie, and she's kind of relaying them to me. And then back to him in front, he said, Marjorie, why don't you just put brass on the phone? And so he said, Brad, there's just two things you need to know. First of all, you're exactly where you need to be. And secondly, you're going to be fine. And I went from feeling a fair amount of fear and concern and trepidation to just this sense of calm washing over me. Both because here is a man who knows the heart inside out and understands exactly what's going on based on the description he got. So I trusted that his prognosis was real. And then secondly, as a man of God and a man of great faith, I trusted in his pronouncement that I would be all right. I just had this confirmation, this spiritual moment of, okay, he knows, and I know that he knows. And I was so calm. And I think some of the ER docs and nurses who were attending me once I get done, or they're probably a little bit surprised how calm I was. I was just taking everything in. Yeah, come in and see it go take. But, they're like, well, you're in the middle of a heart attack. I was just so calm. But how amazing, in the middle of something very important where he was the one giving the instruction. He was the one speaking to a large group, excuse himself for a few minutes to take the call.
That circle beyond just the family, this final, the principle is, number 8 is the right tribe.
Yes.
So to me, it's similar, but you expand that circle beyond just the walls of your home. What is the right tribe?
It's about having this core group of friends that both you can rely on. They're going to be there for you. You have each other's backs. You share life's ups and downs. Is that a helicopter? Yeah, that's pretty cool. Maybe they'll land and take us for a ride. It's fun. So it's both this concept of this tight-knit group of people that you have each other's backs. It's also the sociality of it, that people who have friends that they associate with regularly are happier, healthier, they live longer. But there's one more piece to it, that having the right tribe can also mean that the people you're associating with most influence your habits, your behaviors, because things like obesity, smoking, drinking to excess are contagious, as are healthy lifestyle choices. Healthy habits are contagious. So when you have a tribe who are living healthy, who who are moving regularly, exercising, walking, who are living joyfully, who are living life with purpose, who have their reason for waking up every morning, who are living that kind of life. When those are your tribe, then you all lift each other up and you all live longer and live stronger. That's what it means.
Yeah, I think it's underrated, but is probably the most easy to comprehend as to what's important.
Yeah.
Russ, what do you feel like your father did to keep the right tribe, to keep the right people around him, and how did he influence those in his tribe?
I think of how inclusive he was of everyone, from families to, welcoming new in-laws, and he often referred to widening the circle of the family circle, to how it applies to larger communities of being inclusive and loving to one another, and how that brings encouragement and lifts other people up. And so I think he chose to surround himself with people that did the same thing, and the multiplying effect of all those people with the similar goals, attitudes, and desires was really pretty remarkable.
Marjorie, how did you feel that he found joy in the people around him and his friends and in that sort of larger circle?
I felt like our parents were really great examples of that, because they had lifelong friends that we knew and loved dearly as like aunts and uncles, that they made friendships in medical school or each place. I'm like, okay, now they picked up those friends in Minnesota, his friends, and and their friends loved us, and it was this big, wonderful, expansive circle, and that influenced me a lot as when I was raising my children, and even now, like, you make friends and that ever widening circle, and it just makes life feel so much more joyful and complete, knowing that you've got people that you count on, even if you haven't seen them for however long. It's really special.
Well, we've gone through 8 pretty awesome principles. I've loved seeing how all of these tie into each other.
Until next time, we look forward to taking this journey with you. We hope you'll walk with us on this path so you too can live longer and live stronger. I'm Brad Lowder.
Keros Lowder, thanks to our guests. Thanks you guys for being here.
Such a joy to be with you too. Thank you so much.